What happens when hope feels impossible and the future looks broken? Ezekiel speaks to a people in exile, cut off from home, identity, and certainty. Through powerful visions and bold symbolism, this book confronts loss, exposes responsibility, and announces renewal. In this video, we'll explore Ezekiel and discover how accountability, transformation, and hope emerge even in the most disorienting seasons of life. Overview. Ezekiel is a prophetic book centered on visions, symbolic actions, and messages delivered during Israel's exile in Babylon. Ezekiel, both prophet and priest, is called to speak to a displaced people struggling with despair, guilt, and confusion about God's presence. The book unfolds in three major movements. Judgment on Israel, chapters 1 to 24. Ezekiel confronts Jerusalem's corruption, idolatry, and moral failure. Through striking visions and dramatic symbolic acts, he explains why judgment has come and emphasizes personal responsibility. Judgment on the nations, chapters 25 to 32. God's sovereignty extends beyond Israel. Neighboring nations are held accountable for arrogance, violence, and injustice. Restoration and hope, chapters 33 to 48. After Jerusalem's fall, the tone shifts. Ezekiel speaks of renewal, a transformed heart, restored leadership, and a renewed presence of God among his people. The book is visually intense and emotionally charged. Wheels within wheels, living creatures, dry bones rising to life, and a restored temple dominate its imagery. Ezekiel communicates that while judgment is real, restoration is not abandoned. Historical and social setting. Ezekiel prophesied during the Babylonian exile in the early 6th century BCE. Many Israelites had been forcibly relocated, stripped of land, leadership, and temple worship. The exile raised painful questions. Was God still present? Had the covenant failed? Was there a future at all? As a priest, Ezekiel deeply understood the loss of the temple. His visions reinterpret God's presence, showing that God is not confined to a building or location. Faith must continue even in displacement. Socially, the people wrestled with blame and identity. Ezekiel directly addresses this by stressing individual responsibility, rejecting the idea that people are doomed by their ancestors' sins alone. Each person is accountable for their own choices. Key themes in Ezekiel. The presence of God. God is not limited by geography. His presence moves with his people, even in exile. Personal responsibility. Individuals are accountable for their actions. Transformation begins with honest self-examination. Judgment and justice. God confronts corruption, idolatry, and injustice with clarity and seriousness. Symbolism and vision. Visual imagery communicates spiritual truths that words alone cannot express. Restoration and renewal. Judgment is not the final word. Renewal follows repentance and humility. A new heart and spirit. God promises inner transformation, replacing hardened hearts with renewed ones. Hope after collapse. Even after devastation, rebuilding is possible, spiritually and communally. Key verses in Ezekiel. Ezekiel 1 verse 28, the vision of God's glory reveals his majesty and presence. Ezekiel 18 verse 20, each person is responsible for their own actions. Ezekiel 33 verse 11, God desires repentance, not destruction. Ezekiel 36 verse 26, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. Ezekiel 37 verses 5 to 6, dry bones come to life, symbolizing renewal and hope. Ezekiel 48 verse 35, the Lord is there, affirming restored presence. Relevance Today. Ezekiel speaks powerfully to times of disruption, displacement, and loss of identity. Whether through personal crisis, societal upheaval, or spiritual exhaustion, many people today feel disconnected and uncertain about the future. Ezekiel reminds us that transformation often begins in exile-like seasons. The book challenges modern readers to take responsibility for their choices rather than shifting blame. It also offers reassurance that renewal is possible, even when systems fail and familiar structures collapse. Ezekiel's vision of a new heart resonates deeply today. Change is not merely external. Real restoration requires inner transformation, honesty, and willingness to begin again. The message is both demanding and hopeful. Closing thought. Ezekiel is a book for broken seasons. It does not deny collapse or avoid hard truths, but it refuses to surrender to despair. Through vivid visions and uncompromising honesty, it reveals a God who confronts wrongdoing while actively working toward renewal. The lasting message of Ezekiel is this: collapse is not the end of the story. Renewal begins when responsibility is accepted and hearts are open to change. Even in exile, even in ruins, God remains present and restoration remains possible. Ezekiel invites us to believe that no situation is too dry, too distant, or too damaged for new life to begin.